Welcome to G Fun Facts Online, where we dig into the science behind the world's most fascinating stories. Today, we're looking at one of the planet's most beloved flowers, the orchid. When you picture an orchid, you probably think of its stunning, intricate blossom, a masterpiece of natural art. But the most incredible part of an orchid's story isn't its flower. It's a secret alliance, a hidden partnership that happens underground. A story of life, dependence, and sometimes even deception. Every single orchid you have ever seen owes its existence to a silent partner from an entirely different kingdom of life: fungi. Let's unravel the riddle of the orchid's secret ally. To really grasp this, we have to start at the very beginning, with the seed. Now, most plant seeds are like a well-prepared traveler, carrying a packed lunch. This nutrient-rich packed lunch, called an endosperm, gives the embryo all the energy it needs to germinate, push through the soil, and grow its first leaves. Orchid seeds, however, are a completely different story. They are unimaginably tiny, often called dust seeds. A single seed pod from an orchid can contain millions of these microscopic embryos. And here's the problem: they have no packed lunch. No endosperm, no food reserves, nothing. This evolutionary choice allows them to be carried vast distances by the wind, like botanical dust. But it also presents a life-or-death challenge. How can a seed with practically zero energy ever hope to grow? If one of these dust seeds lands on the ground, its journey is over before it begins, unless it gets incredibly lucky. It has to land in a spot that contains not just the right moisture and temperature, but also the right species of fungus. The seed's survival hinges entirely on encountering a compatible partner from the subterranean world of mycorrhizal fungi. Without this fungal connection, the orchid seed will simply lie dormant and eventually die. This initial stage of life is completely dependent. The orchid is what we call a mycoheterotroph, which is a scientific way of saying it gets all its food from a fungus. The fungus essentially becomes a surrogate parent, feeding the helpless orchid embryo the carbohydrates and nutrients it desperately needs to even begin the process of germination. So what happens when seed meets fungus? This is where the magic starts. The fungal hyphae, which are these incredibly fine, thread-like structures that make up the main body of the fungus, approach and penetrate the orchid seed. Now, you might hear the word infection and think of disease. But for the orchid seed, this is a welcome, life-giving invitation. It's the handshake that seals the deal on their partnership. Once the fungus is inside, it acts as a lifeline, pumping nutrients directly into the orchid embryo. Fueled by this external energy source, the embryo begins to swell and transform. It develops into a strange, unique structure called a protocorm. A protocorm doesn't look like a plant at all. It's a small, white, tuber-like blob. It has no leaves, no roots, and no chlorophyll, meaning it can't perform photosynthesis to create its own food. Think of the protocorm as a nursery, a temporary home where the baby orchid is fed and nurtured entirely by its fungal benefactor. If we could zoom in and look inside the cells of this protocorm, we would see something amazing. The fungal threads don't just sit there. They form intricate, tightly wound coils known as pelotons. These pelotons are the primary sites of nutrient exchange. But the relationship gets even more interesting. The orchid doesn't just passively accept these nutrients. In a process called mycophagy, which literally means fungus eating, the orchid protocorm actively digests some of these pelotons to absorb the nutrients they contain. It's a controlled digestion, a way for the orchid to power its own growth. This delicate, fungus-fueled phase is absolutely critical. Over weeks, months, or even years, the protocorm slowly develops, eventually sprouting its very first root and its very first leaf. The moment that first leaf unfurls and turns green, the entire dynamic of the relationship can begin to change. As the young orchid grows leaves, it gains the power of photosynthesis. It can now harness sunlight to create its own sugars. At this point, for many of the world's 30,000 orchid species, the relationship with the fungus shifts. It transitions from total dependence to a more balanced, mutualistic partnership. The orchid, now producing its own food, can start paying its dues. It provides the fungus with sugars, and in return, the fungus continues to act as an extended root system, using its vast underground network to draw in water and essential mineral nutrients from the soil that the orchid's own roots can't reach. It becomes a fair trade, a classic symbiotic relationship where both partners benefit. But, as with any complex relationship, it's not always that simple. The orchid world is filled with intrigue, and some species have decided that this fair trade model isn't for them. A significant number of orchids remain partially mycoheterotrophic their entire lives. Even as fully grown photosynthesizing adults, they continue to steal a little extra carbon from their fungal partners on the side. It's like having a job but still getting a monthly allowance from your parents. And then, there are the real rebels, the masters of this strategy. These are the cheaters of the orchid world. Dozens of species have completely abandoned photosynthesis altogether. They've lost their chlorophyll, the green pigment that captures sunlight, and live their entire lives in the shadows of the forest floor. They are full-time mycoheterotrophs, from seed to flower. These plants are often pale, ghostly, and almost alien in their appearance. They only emerge from the leaf litter to send up a flowering stalk, reproduce, and then disappear again. They are, in essence, parasites. But they aren't parasitizing the fungus directly in the way you might think. Instead, they're tapping into a much larger network. The fungus they partner with is often in a mutualistic relationship with the surrounding trees. So the tree photosynthesizes, feeds sugars to its fungal partner, and the orchid then hijacks that system, siphoning off nutrients that were originally intended for the fungus. It's a complex three-way relationship: tree, fungus, and orchid. A classic example of one of these cheaters is the famous ghost orchid, the Dendrophylax lindenii, from the swamps of Florida and Cuba. This plant is nothing but a tangle of greenish, photosynthetic roots clinging to a tree. It has no leaves. Its existence depends entirely on a specific type of fungus to provide it with crucial nutrients. Its ethereal, white flowers seem to float in the humid air, a ghostly testament to a life lived entirely through this hidden alliance. Another fascinating example is the bird's nest orchid, Neotia nidisavis, found in woodlands across Europe and Asia. Its name comes from the tangled, nest-like mass of its roots. This orchid is brownish, has no chlorophyll, and is completely non-photosynthetic. It is entirely dependent on its fungal partner, which in turn is connected to the roots of nearby trees like beeches. The fungus acts as a bridge, funneling nutrients from the tree directly to the orchid. The bird's nest orchid has completely outsourced its energy production. This strategy of cheating isn't just a one-off fluke. Scientists believe it has evolved independently multiple times across the orchid family. This tells us just how flexible and powerful this symbiotic relationship can be, allowing orchids to find new ways to survive in competitive environments. And this partnership is ancient. Fossil evidence and genetic studies suggest that the reliance on fungi for germination was a key trait from the very beginning of the orchid family, dating back tens of millions of years to the late Cretaceous period. One idea, called the waiting room hypothesis, suggests that the ancestors of orchids already had fungi living in their roots. Over millions of years, this casual association became more and more specialized, eventually leading to the absolute dependence we see today. The evolution of the full cheater lifestyle likely happened in steps. The first crucial step was probably a shift from partnering with fungi that eat dead things to partnering with fungi that are connected to living trees. This gave the orchids access to a much larger and more reliable source of carbon, paving the way for some species to eventually ditch photosynthesis entirely. Now, this incredibly intimate and specific relationship with fungi is a double-edged sword. It has been the key to the orchid's incredible success, allowing it to colonize nearly every habitat on Earth. But it also makes them extremely vulnerable. When we destroy a habitat, by cutting down a forest or draining a swamp, we don't just destroy the orchids we can see, we also destroy the invisible, underground network of specific fungi that they absolutely need to reproduce and survive. This makes orchid conservation an incredibly complex challenge. You can't just save the plant, you have to save its partner too. Thankfully, conservationists are now focusing on this symbiosis. One of the most promising strategies is called symbiotic germination. Instead of just scattering seeds in a protected area and hoping for the best, scientists first identify the specific fungus an endangered orchid needs. They then grow that fungus in a lab and use it to germinate the orchid seeds under controlled conditions. These lab-grown seedlings, already inoculated with their essential fungal allies, have a much higher chance of survival when they are reintroduced into the wild. Institutions like the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center are creating fungus banks, living libraries of these vital organisms, to support conservation projects. We're seeing success stories. In Australia, researchers have successfully reintroduced endangered spider orchids by pairing them with their specific fungal partners. In Florida, efforts to save native orchids involve carefully assessing the soil to ensure the right fungi are present before reintroducing plants. But it's not easy. Many orchids are extremely picky about their fungal partners, and isolating and culturing these fungi can be a slow, painstaking process. Despite the hurdles, this growing understanding of the orchid's secret ally is a huge beacon of hope for the future of these magnificent plants. The story of the orchid and the fungus is a powerful reminder that the world is far more interconnected than we can see. It's a drama of dependence and cooperation that plays out entirely beneath our feet. So the next time you see an orchid, in a garden, a shop, or maybe even in the wild, take a moment to think about its hidden half. Remember the microscopic dust seed with no food, the nurturing protocorm, and the vast, intricate network of fungal threads that gave it the spark of life. Because inside the stem of every single orchid is the secret of a powerful, ancient, and truly wonderful alliance. Thanks for listening to G Fun Facts Online.